So whenever I come to Kuala Lumpur, I try to stay in a different place. And this time I'm staying in, actually it's Chinatown. But take a look at the temple, the Hindu temple, that is right behind me in essentially Chinatown. And it's quite an old temple. It was built at least 50 years ago. And it's really interesting to see because right behind me, you also have some shops that serve food. In the morning, about 6 a.m., a lot of people will line up, get I suppose, a box of food, and then head out to their destination. And I was just speaking with somebody over here, and what happens is that you essentially pray for a safe return. So you come here and you will light a candle, or you will offer a flower to Ganesh, which is the god of this temple, and you're going to hope for a safe return. But what's really interesting about Malaysia is that right behind this temple, a Hindu temple in Chinatown, you also have what's called Wisma Anglican. You have an Anglican building that's right behind me as well. So what is really interesting about Malaysia is just how diverse it really is. So everywhere you go, you're going to have a very different experience. In part because you're not only meeting, if you're in the United States, you're going to be meeting in Silicon Valley, for the most part, PhDs and so on from India, computer scientists and so on and so forth, with Google, Microsoft, etc. But over here, you can't really tell who you're meeting. It could be somebody from Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. You have to remember that in the old days, when these places were built, number one, they were built to accommodate blue-collar workers. So in the old days, we'd had very less reliance on machines, and so you really did have to import a lot of labor. And that is another interesting way to study history, because you can see the comparison between, say, the United States, which also benefited from a lot of manual labor, and Malaysia, which of course also benefited from manual labor. By the way, right behind me is probably one of the nicest buildings in the whole city, in the whole country. It is the headquarters in Kuala Lumpur of Maybank. So, and right behind me over here, in front of me would be a vegetarian Hindu restaurant. So you'll see over here that the oldest building appears to be the temple. And so I suspect that what you see here is a very old ritual where you have a lot of blue-collar workers waking up, going out to their destination, and then praying for a safe return, buying a flower, and so on and so forth. Now, I just finished a book by a Sikh, a Malaysian who was Sikh, and essentially Punjabi, and he received an exclusive license for Adidas, and as a result, just became one of the most, interesting people in the whole country, as well as one of its best philanthropists. In his book, he talks about Bumi Putera. He talks about the fact that you have this term that is usually referring to the son of the soil, people of the land. And he points out that as far as he's concerned, he should count as a Bumi Putera, because Bumi actually apparently goes all the way back into a Hindu or Punjabi language. So you have a lot of interesting things coinciding, and because you don't necessarily have a lot of zoning enforcement, you can see all of that right in front of you. And this is just one spot. In front of me is the tallest building in the whole city as well, the Merdeka Tower at night. So if you just take a walk and you pick the right hotel, which is not an expensive hotel, it takes about $30 a night, no gym, no pool, and you just take a walk, you're going to get an experience in Malaysia you probably can't get somewhere else. And that, I think, is going to be evidence of its tolerance over time, despite post-independence preferences for quote-unquote sons of the soil. It's because after colonization, post-colonization, post-independence, you had a government that didn't really know anywhere in the world how to best move forward, but they had to comply with the demands of the quote-unquote indigenous population, which in this case, in this place right here, would be the Malaysians. And so you have a government that focused on making sure that this group was which had been oppressed essentially by the British, would be coming out of poverty. But at the same time you have this, it's very obvious that the government was also in a position where it had to be tolerant, either because it needed the labor, but also because it's very hard to turn down a request to build a religious institution, or to ask for a plot of land to build a religious structure. And so I remember when I was in Calgary, I remember walking by and seeing a church on every corner. And again, Calgary would be oil and gas, so you have, again, a place where you would need people to go, blue-collar workers, to go on the weekends to congregate and so on and so forth. So my point is that all over the world, you're looking at the history of blue-collar workers, no matter where you go. If there's any sort of natural resources, and over here, obviously, there's everything. There's rubber, tin, Petronas is oil, palm oil, and so on and so forth. Wherever you go, for the most part, unless the whole place has been bombed to the ground, whether in a war or by an atomic weapon, for the most part, you're looking at a lot of stories, all of which revolve around blue-collar workers and the need for manual labor. And one way that you can test a country is how well it treated the descendants of those manual laborers. That's something to think about when you travel anywhere in the world that you go.